What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 12 of the Create and Execute podcast. Thank you guys for showing up. We're keeping it consistent. We try to drop episode every week. Well, we will be dropping an episode every week. Thank you for showing up. This week, we have Greg Henning here today.
Thanks for having me.
And we have Ixchel.
Again, hello, thank you.
And it's me as always. So we want to talk about different things as like how do you become a lawyer, different things in law, and how they are integrating tech or how lawyers can use tech in law. So different things like that. So just follow us, just like every episode, just follow us. You'll start learning some stuff the longer you stay on here. So let's get it started. How do you get into law? We'll start there.
Hi, Greg, how are you? Nice to meet you.
You can skip right to the stuff. That's fine. No.
What's your background?
Greg, how are you? I'm sorry. I really haven't seen you in years either. That's crazy. I should have. I'm nervous. I'm sorry. I'm nervous.
No, all good. How do you get into law? You got to go to college first to get a 4-year degree. Then most people go to law school either right after college or within a couple of years. But actually, Boston has some really good programs that are part-time programs. So if you're interested in law school and you can only go part-time or you can only go at night, there's really good part-time programs at New England School of Law, Suffolk, all places that are right in the area. The biggest hurdle I think people have trying to get into law is the cost, because you're paying for both college and law school. A lot of people take on loans. And then you have to do the same sort of things you would to get into college. There's a test, the LSAT. Just like the SAT, there's the LSAT. You have to study for that, get a good score. And then even after you start law school, it's a 3-year grind, and it's a lot of reading constantly. And then once you graduate, you got to go find a way to make money to pay back those loans. So it can be a heavy burden to try to carry the school loans when you're going into the legal field, but it's really rewarding.
What's the degree that you need to get?
The degree you get so whatever your college degree is, you could graduate with a college degree in chemistry, biology, engineering. Doesn't really affect whether or not you go to law school. Once you go to law school, you get something called the JD, Juris Doctorate. Mm-hmm. You're not really a doctor. It's just, that's the term that they call it, a JD. So you're an attorney, you're a JD. Once you graduate from law school, you have to go take the bar. The bar is usually a 2-day test. You study for 3 or 4 months. You either pass or fail. They don't give you a score. And then once you pass the bar, you get your license to practice law. You're off to the races.
Is it like nursing where I think you could only fail so many times before they're like, yo, you have to
No, you can
or something?
You can take the bar many times. I don't know if there's any restriction, at least in Massachusetts, for the number of times you can take it. There's actually some states where you can pass the bar without actually going to law school. So if you live in California, you can become a lawyer even if you did not go to law school. You can just take the bar, study for it. If you pass, you get a law license like everybody else. Not every state is like that. Massachusetts, you have to go to law school.
Okay. Would you say it's worth it? Because it sounds like it's a lot of debt.
It's a lot of debt. I would tell you that most people who become lawyers are not happy with what they chose.
Damn.
Yeah, because everybody sees it on television. They watch your friend Manny, right? Sammy and I know each other through a third person, Manny. He loves this show Law & Order. Law & Order looks like lawyers, detectives solving crimes. They figure it out in an hour. The lawyers are running around the courtroom. They're only doing interesting stuff. That's not what it's really like in real life. Most people go to law school. They then go to a job where they might be sitting in an office all day, doing paperwork all day. The percentage of lawyers that actually do a jury trial, like you see on TV in the movies or television, probably less than 5% that would ever actually do a jury trial.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're imagining lawyers practicing that they're the ones in the courtroom all the time. I don't even know what the numbers are. You can look it up. The vast majority of lawyers never do a jury trial, but also don't even do the type of cases that you see on TV. They do transactional work. You want to buy a house? They do a closing on your house. You want to start a company? They form your LLC. You want to get a name brand? They help do marketing materials and make sure there's compliance with any regulatory issues. If that all sounds boring, it's because it is for a lot of legal jobs. A lot of lawyers have boring jobs. So after they do it for a while and they realize they have debt, they don't love what they're doing, many people transition into something called reformed lawyers. They go off and do something else. They might still use their law degree a little bit, but they're not practicing law the same way they thought they would when they went to law school.
Okay.
So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So you would say the bulk of lawyer work is paperwork?
Depends what you're doing.
Okay.
For most people, the bulk of legal work has to do with paperwork and reading. If you don't like reading, don't even bother. And if you don't like reading stuff that doesn't interest you, don't bother. Because when you go to law school, you don't get to pick only the interesting classes. When you pass the bar, You're taking classes in taxation, corporation, wills, trusts, and estates, civil procedure, contracts. And if your eyes are glazing over right now and you're thinking, damn, I don't want to do any of that, don't go to law school.
And it's a lot of very specific keywords too that like you don't use in everyday English also, right?
There's weird terminology. There's weird practices and things that you do as a lawyer that other people don't do. But, you know, for example, if you're going to buy a house now, somebody hands you hundreds of documents of paperwork and you have to sign all those documents. You go through it. It might take an hour and a half to do the closing on your house. Even me as a lawyer, I do not sit and read every single page because I know that there are people much smarter than me that do that type of law, and I should ask them for advice. So being a lawyer isn't like being a chef, where you think a chef can cook any type of meal and they can whip something up in the kitchen. It's not like Iron Chef where you give them some ingredients and they'll figure it out.
Gotcha.
Lawyers practice in a particular area. Just like you wouldn't go to a dentist to get a heart transplant, you don't go to a contracts lawyer if you get charged with murder. So there's very different specialties.
Yeah, so it's more so like doctors and nurses, how they have specialties where it's like, oh, at school they learn a lot of general information, but then they hyper focus towards the end. Okay.
All doctors can provide life-saving measures for you in an emergency, but a heart surgeon is not going to replace your knee when you're 70 years old.
Yeah.
And if an NFL football player got an elbow injury, they wouldn't go to a cancer surgeon. Same sort of thing. They all learned physiology. They all learned where the heart is, where the different muscles are. But in that special area, you don't go to somebody that doesn't practice in that specialty. So lawyers are, generally speaking, trained the same way, but they all specialize in something different.
Okay. Would you say it's lucrative to be a lawyer because only 5% become like not actual lawyers, but only 5 go on trial?
So this is where the misconception is. The people that you see going to trial, the ones that are in a courtroom, arguing in front of a jury, going and talking to a judge, they are a small portion, very small portion of lawyers. If I had to guess, I would say that the lawyers that do what's called transactional work, the people that work in an office, helping companies build themselves, compliance work, maybe helping investors, they probably make a lot more money than the people that are trial lawyers, just by the nature of the business. So is it lucrative? Yes, it can be. But if you want to go make a bunch of money, lawyers are not the way to do it. Go out and start a business, go out and invest in the right thing, build something from the ground up. It will make you money depending on the path you choose, but it's not going to make you, internet worthy money.
Okay. Why is there celebrity lawyers, I'm sorry, that make the internet money? Is that why they become a celebrity lawyer? So they can try to...
You're talking to the people that defend people in Hollywood and...
Yeah. And you hear about them like, they're on every high-profile case.
Right. So a friend of mine who has started businesses and went to Harvard Business School, smartest person I know, gives me really good advice. He's often told me, don't trade your time for money. So if you're trading hours put in for dollars paid, then you're capping the amount of money that you can ever possibly make because you only have 24 hours in a day. So if you get paid $100 an hour and you work 24 hours in a day, that's the max that you're going to be able to make. Most of the time, lawyers charge by their hour. So they bill people on an hourly rate. Mm-hmm. You can make a lot of money because you can jack up your hourly rate. So the people that represent really high-profile defendants or represent companies that make a lot of money, those attorneys can have super high rates, but there's still a max that they can possibly make because they can only bill so many hours. You got to sleep 8 hours. Hopefully you got to see your family. Got to take care of your kids. If you start a company, nobody's saying to Elon Musk, how many hours did you spend on building Tesla? But he's worth tens of billions of dollars because he built something that exploded and took off. So he was able to scale it. Mm-hmm. Lawyers can make a bunch of money. Even the people that represent the high-profile defendants and the high-profile companies, they don't make Amazon money. They're not making investment banker, private equity, hedge fund money. They're making a lot of money, especially compared to the average American, but they're not making the super uber wealthy money that you see people, walking around with.
Gotcha. Let that be known that, take that into not fact, but
consideration.
Yeah, no, I want to say so take that into consideration, the fact, or highlight the fact that he said he goes to people that's smarter than him and they said, don't trade your time for dollars. For money. Yeah, if you're trying to make a lot of money.
And keep in mind, I do this. So I'm trading time for money in a lot of the work that I do. So I'm not necessarily following the advice of my friend.
Yeah.
But he told me after I already got into it. If I had to go back and do it, mm-hmm. I might still get a law degree, but I probably wouldn't be in a position where I'm trading hours for dollars Because if you decide I have a choice of going out to dinner with my girlfriend or my wife, or going to my kid's basketball game, versus I work a couple extra hours, you have to think about that choice every single night, every single day. You're waking up and thinking, what trade am I going to make today on dollars versus time?
Yeah.
And that can build up over a period of time. It can cause more stress really than it's worth. If you go and work for a company that builds something and you have a payout perhaps in the long run because you built a great product and the company takes off, if you sell 1,000,000 units versus 1,000 units, you're not working multiples longer.
Yeah.
You've just built the scale of the business. So I'm giving you the advice, but it doesn't necessarily mean I follow my own advice.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, everybody's different. It may work for you, may not work for somebody else. So it's always that balance. Could we actually backtrack? Because what you were saying, I should have introduced you better. Want to know like how you initially started.
Who is this man?
Yeah, we're all over the place. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry.
Yeah, how did you start? So like after, or what college did you go to? And then after that, like job wise?
I went to Harvard. When I left Harvard, I went right to law school. If I did it over again, I probably would not go right to law school. I would have gone out and gotten a job, lived a little bit. But I went from college right to law school, and I went to University of Virginia, which is down in Charlottesville, about 2 hours away from D.C. When I left Virginia, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to go work for a federal judge down in Macon, Georgia, which is real south. And I worked there for a year and came back to Boston and decided to start practicing as a criminal prosecutor because I wanted to be the guy in the courtroom. So just like the people you see on TV and in the movies, I had taken classes that let me be in a courtroom, argue cases, talk to juries. So I wanted to do that. So I went into criminal prosecution and I was doing jury trials, search warrants, arraigning people the Monday after, chaos, and you're showing up in court and you're making these decisions as a very young attorney. So you get this feeling that you are doing really important things. And I did that for a while, and then partway through that time, I quit and decided I wanted to do something different. And the different thing I tried to do is to teach. So I went and taught your friend Manny and your friend Charles, and a couple of other young guys that you know when they were in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade. And after maybe 3 or 4 months of teaching, I realized I wanted to strangle them. And I finished a year of teaching and figured out I was probably better helping people out as a lawyer than quitting my job and being a teacher.
You're like, I'd rather read the terms and conditions than deal with all these kids.
Look, no doubt, I have no doubt in saying this, and I've been practicing law for almost 20 years, something like that. Being a teacher is the hardest job I've ever had, by far.
Yeah. Worked
longer hours, more stressful, more intense. The feeling of hopelessness or not being effective in teaching people is a real thing. Teacher stress, totally different than other people's stress. Because every day you're going to walk into a room of 30 people and try to convince them, you got to read this, you have to write a certain way. That's real stress. So after I left teaching, I went back to being a prosecutor for another 5 years, and I was doing homicide cases, so murder cases, and I was running the gang unit. And this was in Boston, so it's Suffolk County, all of Boston, Revere, Chelsea, and Winthrop. And then I ran for district attorney in Boston. The old guy who was the former district attorney, the old boss, Dan Conley, decided to not run for re-election. I ran in the election. I lost in September of 2018. And I realized that I needed to do something different because I wasn't going to stay in the office when the new administration came in. So I had this idea. Before I decided to run for DA, my wife and I sat down. She was my girlfriend at the time. And I said, I think I'm going to do this. And she said, if you lose, you're probably going to get fired. I was like, okay, that's real. I probably would get fired. What are you going to do? And I said, there's this movie. It's called Michael Clayton. It's a George Clooney movie. Mm-hmm. And in the movie, he is a fixer. He goes and works for people that are in trouble, but he works for a big firm. He doesn't have to go to court, but people call him when really bad things happen. And that had kind of been my life, from former students, family members, friends of mine, colleagues, coworkers. People just seemed to call when really bad things happen and they needed advice or they needed to get out of a jam. So I said, I'm going to start this business just like the guy in the movie. So my wife and I sat down, we watched the movie. She was my girlfriend again at the time, not even my fiance. And at the end of the movie, she said, George Clooney is a lot more handsome than you are, but I think you could do what he's doing. And so we basically started the business a couple months after the election was over in 2018. and we started February 2019, and we've been going ever since.
Nice.
Okay.
So what's your official title that you've made for yourself?
The business is called Henning Strategies. So my last name, Henning Strategies. We are a law firm, but we're different. We are crisis management, investigations, and PR, public relations. The way I describe it for people is when really bad or weird things happen and you need to call somebody that has absolute confidence, the ability to be discreet, to keep secrets, but to help you navigate very sticky situations, we get those types of phone calls. Sometimes it's lawyers calling us, sometimes it's business owners, sometimes it's your friend's friend, and it can range from criminal issues to publicity and media issues. I'm going to end up in the newspaper because something bad happened and they think I'm involved, or our company had something bad happen and we want to know what took place. We get hired a lot when companies want to get to the bottom of an issue. So what we're using is our criminal background as investigators. Me and my two partners were prosecutors for 10 or 11 years, each of us. And so our goal is to take what we learned digging, finding evidence, getting to the truth, asking questions, putting into the private sector. So if it's companies or individuals and they have a crisis, those are the people that call us.
Could you explain how stressful it is in the sense that you said people will typically hit you up when a crisis happens?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of it in the same way, like we call the cops, and the cops is only around when bad stuff happens. So it's like I'm assuming they're always on edge because it's like you never get called when something good happens.
No.
So could you speak to that and just like having to do that on your day to day?
Yeah. So for me personally, the biggest hurdle is the thing that's sitting next to me vibrating as we're talking. I have this on me at all times, and people expect you to answer the phone. They don't necessarily pay you before you answer the phone, but they expect that you're going to answer because that's part of the service that we're providing. When they call, we answer because we know it's going to be a problem. My phone rings at all hours of the night. I get text messages, phone calls, emails, whether I'm on vacation or not, whether I'm at a sporting event or not. When I wake up in the morning, there's a backlog. When I go to bed at night, there's a backlog. So it's constant. And that's one of the downsides of being a lawyer. If you're trading your time for money, when people need your help, you need to respond, because if you don't, that's your client, that's your business, that's going out the door. So the biggest stress, I think, is accessibility and people always communicating with you. But even after that communication part, nobody calls to give you good news. It's not cheerful. They're not smiling on the other end of the phone. People cry, people are screaming, people are upset. They call from the back of a police car. They call from a courtroom. They call from their house when something bad is happening at the house. So the nature of what we do is, as I've described it to people, we get most people calling us on their worst day, and they just need help. And that's the focus of our business.
Yeah, that sounds so stressful.
It is.
I cannot imagine. It's like every time somebody's just like, yo, they're probably mad at you. And well, they're mad in general. They're taking it out on you. Just like, yo, bro, like, you're like the 10th person to do this to me. Like,
I have to say, they don't typically take it out on you during that first call. They're desperate, and so they need help. Once the process starts going, whether they get charged with a crime or they've discovered something going on in their family or in their business, babysitters stealing from people, sexual indiscretions, companies where their business partner and longtime friend ends up raiding the company of a whole bunch of money, criminal charges that you had nothing to do with, innocent people who get accused and get criminally charged. They get upset because they see where things might be going and they need help. So those initial phone calls are often desperate, upset, depressed, scared. And then part of the goal is to walk them through the process and make sure people feel comfortable and informed and calm everybody down. Because most of the time, generally speaking, it's not really a crisis at the moment that they're calling. They might see something coming down the line and they might think that that's the worst of it at that moment, but it isn't really something where you need to make a decision split second. There's very few split second decisions you have to make.
Okay.
I feel like for that, like a question kind of comes up for me, but I'm having a hard time like putting words for it. I guess it's more like when is it the right time to call a lawyer?
Good question.
Yeah.
It's all incident specific. So it depends on the nature of the circumstances, which is a lawyer's answer. I'm not going to give you a straight answer. I would always say call a lawyer before you actually think you need one. Most of the time, let's say in the criminal context, if you get a phone call from the police or if you get a piece of mail that says come to court, don't wait until the day before to call a lawyer. Don't call back the police detective and start answering questions about whatever it is they're talking about until you've spoken with a lawyer. If somebody sends you a document in the mail that says you're getting sued for something, car accident, eviction notice, whatever, don't wait until the last minute. Call right away, because oftentimes the sooner you get help, the better you're going to be situated at the end. And that's especially the case with criminal situations. It might be that, let's use as an example, there's some sort of bar fight. You get accused of punching somebody out in front of the bar, and you get a piece of paper the day afterwards, or you get arrested, and they say you have to come to court in a couple days. You go to court, you come back, and there's some future court date in 60 days, and you don't call anybody until day 58. Oh yeah, I might need to get a lawyer. During that time, video from the bar might have disappeared. Witnesses might have forgotten things. People that worked at the bar who were employees who might have seen something, they might have gotten quit. They might have quit or moved to a different state. So there's all kinds of information that you can get to help build your case and protect yourself if you start early. If you wait until later, things disappear. Memories fade, video goes away, people move. The sooner the better on almost every single situation. And the last thing that you want is to say, oh, if you'd only done this, if you'd only called sooner, I would have been able to help you. That's a really frustrating call to have to make to somebody.
So for that, sorry, I have a follow-up. Do you mind?
Yeah, no,
okay. So for that one, I think part of the reason why some people wait sometimes is because they don't actually have a lawyer that they know on hand. So what kind of like you're the lawyer for the crisis situations, but what kind of lawyer should people should be looking for, and at what age should we start looking for a lawyer?
Good question. Part of what we do is criminal defense. So people that get in trouble for virtually any type of crime. If you know somebody that gets in trouble, or if you get in trouble yourself, the first thing that you should be asking is, what type of lawyer do I need? A lot of times people will say, well, my mother's friend so-and-so is a lawyer for this company. Don't think about that person as the one who's going to help you. Think about that person as the one who's going to direct you to the right person. So when somebody calls me and says, I'm getting divorced, I don't do divorce, but I know a lot of really good divorce attorneys. If somebody says, my grandmother is old and she may pass away in the next couple of years, she wants to do a will so that we know what happens to her house or her 401k. I don't do that, but I know really good people that do trusts and estates. So you can go find a lawyer that you know, or contact the people that run this podcast and say, hey, that guy that was on, I don't know if he does this thing, but I need help. That happens all the time in our business. And we refer it out to the right type of lawyer. Just like a brain surgeon isn't going to do your knee replacement. He may say, oh, I know a guy who does orthopedic surgery. We'll put you in touch with him and he'll do it. Okay. So always contact somebody that knows the business, even if it's not the right person to do the actual job.
Noted.
Shameless plug. Say your where they can find you at, website? Or
Henning Strategies. Henning
right.
Strategies, yep.
If you guys need help, Henning Strategies. It's also a .com, HenningStrategies.com.
HenningStrategies.com is the website. That's right.
So if I get into, let's say, the bar fight example, and I hit up a lawyer, am I paying immediately?
It depends on the nature of the case. Okay. So if you get charged with a crime and you show up to court and you don't have a lawyer yet, you have the opportunity to get somebody appointed to you for that one court date that you have to first show up. It's called your arraignment. That lawyer will likely be free for the day. But if you can afford a lawyer and the state says, we're not going to pay for your lawyer, you're going to have some time to get an attorney for the next court date that you have to show up. But in that bar fight scenario, if you went to a bar on Saturday and a couple days later you get something in the mail that says, we think you punched somebody, show up in court, you have time before that next court date for you to get a lawyer. At that point, you can start just scoping it out. Who do I need? What type of lawyer do I need? Where did it take place? And as you start contacting people, you should ask, just like in any business, what are your rates? What do you charge? What am I going to be looking at? What's your background? What's your experience doing it? So it would be just like if you were figuring out who's the best car mechanic or the best realtor to sell your house. You're going to try to find somebody that has experience doing it and is trustworthy and hopefully has a couple of people that you know that said, yeah, I got my car fixed there. He's great. I sold my house with this person. Go call Carl Valmier, right? Or Manny Valmier. They're great. Yeah. Great realtors. Go talk to them. That referral will get you connected. But then at that point, you start saying, what does it cost? To your question about, do you start paying right up front? There's different types of pay structures. Some people will do what's called a flat rate. Your case from start to finish, no matter what happens, $5,000. There's other lawyers that charge by the hour. I don't know what's going to happen in your case, but I want to work as hard as possible every single minute of this case that I need to. If the case gets dismissed after a day, you don't have to pay very much. But if the case goes to trial, it's going to be more expensive.
Okay.
So that flat rate versus the hourly is where you start to break down what you're going to be looking at for prices. And in criminal cases, there's kind of a rough standard of what things cost and what people charge, but you may not be getting as good a lawyer or as good service unless it's somebody that can devote much more significant time on an hourly rate. So it all, just like any lawyer answer, it depends on what's going on.
Gotcha. Okay. For the referral thing, do you at least get a percentage of the referral? And if you do, how do you choose who you're giving it to? Because maybe if you're like, I don't really like this guy, I'm going to go to somebody else.
In the legal field, there's certain types of cases that you're allowed to get referrals for and certain ones that you're absolutely prohibited from doing it. So you can't get a case referred if it's a criminal defense case and it's outcome specific. So for example, I can't say, Sammy got in trouble, I'm going to send this case to a friend, and if you get him a not guilty, I want 10% of the case. You can't do that.
Okay.
Not allowed to do that. There are other cases where you can refer. So if you got in a car accident, you broke your leg, you had a spinal injury, a head injury, and you said, Greg, I want to sue the person who did this. Either I take the case or I can send it to a person who will then take the case and represent you. The difference in that situation is you don't pay for that lawyer to do your case. That lawyer will do your case for free from start to finish. Mm-hmm. And then if you recover, they take a percentage of what you recover.
Got you. Okay.
That's called a contingency case. So if you got injured and I took your case and I won $100,000 for you, I'm probably taking between $35,000 and $40,000, 35 to 40%. Mm-hmm. If somebody sent me the case, I might send them 20, 25, 33% of what I got. So if I make $33,000, they might make $11,000. You make the other $66,000.
Okay. How much do you charge for your rates if somebody comes to you?
That is
also, sorry, my bad. Two-part question. Also, do you take on everybody that comes to you? How do you choose who you're?
No, everybody who comes to you is, as I was saying, there's a lot of different types of cases that come in, and I don't do divorce. I don't do trusts and estates and things like that. So when those cases come in the door, no, I'm not taking those type of cases. But one of the things we do, because it's the nature of our firm and it's kind of the crisis management approach, is we may not do the thing you need help with, but we will find the right person to get you the right help. Mm-hmm. So we spend a lot of time with people that aren't going to be our clients in the future, or they're not going to be our clients on this particular situation, but the next time they have a problem, they're going to call us back. And the next time they have a problem, they're going to call us back. And that helps to build their faith and reliance on us. And also we send cases to people that are friends of ours that are good attorneys that do work in that area. What are our rates? If you're ever in a situation where you need to talk to me, I'm happy to share my rates with you.
All right.
And in those situations, always make sure you speak on the phone. Do not write out an email that says, here's what I did, can you help me? Schedule time to be on the phone with somebody. And depending on what the nature of what happened is, it might be that I charge you nothing and we take a percentage of what happened, just like that contingency. Or if it's a criminal defense case, you're probably going to get charged on an hourly rate depending on the significance of the case.
Okay.
So let's just highlight that. If you think you did something wrong, don't put it in writing. Make those phone calls, especially for our generation and younger who love to text.
Yeah, let me give a couple pieces of unsolicited advice here. This is important to listen to. Everything that you do on your phone is potentially retrievable. Even the keystrokes where you delete things can themselves be used as evidence against you. So if you are deleting a tweet, for example, and somebody has screen captured it, the fact that your tweet is up there and then you deleted it looks worse than if your tweet were just there. Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, direct messages, all of those things, people save them, people screenshot them. And even if they don't, the police can sometimes do a search warrant to retrieve pieces. And even if they can't retrieve what you wrote, a prosecutor might stand up in court and say, we don't know what he said, but we know he deleted it, which tells you what was going on in his mind.
Really?
Oh yeah, if he took the time, and Sammy's phone was recovered, they did a search warrant on the phone, and we know that Sammy did two things in the middle of the night. One was he deleted this message. The other was he deleted a communication with so-and-so. We don't know what they said to each other, but we know that that information is important because he went and attempted to delete it.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes you're reacting, it's totally benign. Doesn't mean anything. You delete messages because your phone gets filled up. You delete messages because you get bogus calls and bogus messages all the time. So sometimes people take it out of context. But the fact that they can recover it and the fact that they can do that is something people should be aware of. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two, I have no idea why anybody goes to parties or hangs out with friends anymore while still letting them videotape and take images in the party. I just don't get it. The Justin Bieber rule should be what everybody does. Do you remember?
No.
Please reiterate for the audience.
Justin Bieber early on in his career. This is when he was like pre-married Justin Bieber, crazy Justin Bieber.
Mm-hmm.
He got caught in some sort of situation sleeping with this girl. She videotaped the next morning, laying in bed with him. He's passed out next to her, and she's videotaping selfie with the two of them in bed. So his management team and his security said, from now on, anytime we have anybody hanging out with Justin Bieber, we're going to make
their phones.
That's right. We're taking their phones.
Okay.
You can go in and you can party. You can spend all the time you want, but your phone is with us. And when you leave, we're going to give you the phone back, and then you can take it with you and tell whatever you want to your friends. But the images that people keep, the videos, even the Snapchat, you're taking a quick video. Those have been used to solve murders. Those have been used to break up marriages. Those have been used to identify witnesses in a case. They've been used to identify missing persons. All of those things are hugely valuable for law enforcement or defense attorneys representing somebody. So if you're just going to have fun at a party, I just don't know why everybody sticks around, videotaping and doing selfies and taking pictures the whole time. Almost inevitably, it leads to bad things.
You got to get the views up. You got to get the views.
You might want to get the views up or the engagement, but at what cost?
Yeah.
Right? You get the views up, but I mean, there's been cases where people go on Instagram Live. I'm out here. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And then the people that are their enemies, oh, you're out there? Okay. I see that you're on live. And then they go get shot just because people want to get the views up. Mm-hmm. So there's a double-edged sword to the impact of social media on your life. Yeah.
I'll also add, being a software engineer, I don't know how to do it, but even if you do delete it, they can retrieve a software engineer, not me, a software engineer can figure out a way to retrieve the data that you deleted because it's not completely deleted from your phone. So yeah, there's a bunch of different ways they can retrieve. So just to reiterate what he was saying.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how many years back, right? Because we'll hear celebrity stories where it's like they said something 10 years ago, and it still shows up. But in court, how far back can they go?
Well, there's two types of courts to think about. One is the legal court. The other is the court of public opinion. Mm-hmm. You've seen politicians and famous people and actors and actresses and singers get hit for something that was in their high school yearbook or their college yearbook. I forget what state it was, but there was the gubernatorial candidate who had a picture of him at a white fraternity wearing blackface back 25, 30 years before he was running for office. Somebody still has that yearbook. Somebody still digs it up. Now that's a physical document. Some college yearbook team took pictures, wrote it out, made a book with binding, and somebody had that for 30 years afterwards. Now think about the stuff you put up on the internet. You don't need to have a book. You don't need to make it. Nobody has to be in a college yearbook office. It's just there on Instagram or Twitter or Snapchat or wherever. Or it's posted and other people save the pictures and screenshot it and send it around. It's there forever. So in court, there's maybe restrictions on whether or not you can prove where it came from. That's called admissibility or authentication. Can you say that Sammy posted this picture? Just because it's on his Instagram or his Snapchat or his Twitter doesn't mean you posted it. It might logically be true that you probably posted it, but you could probably fight that out. In the court of public opinion, if your name is above the picture or if somebody says Sammy posted this, people believe it until they're proven otherwise. Yeah. And that's a lot harder to fight.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right now, I know what's going on. All the people watching and the two of you are going, what's the stuff I posted that I really regret?
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking about this podcast even. I'm like, wow.
I just abandoned those accounts. It's like I'm never using them again.
He did, yeah.
Just create a new account to try to add layers to it. They teach us it in the program that I did for software engineering. They kind of taught us how to kind of get rid of the old information that you've done. You could probably you could definitely still dig it up. It's just going to be a lot harder. Mm-hmm. So they kind of have you you have to create different, your actual main account and add more information to it. So when people search, KerlinAugustin or Greg Henny, the certain things that you want out come up to the top. And then at a certain point in Google pages, when you're going down 5, 6, people just this is not real information. If it's not on the first page of Google, I'm not really believing it. So
this is a perfect example. There are companies out there that you will pay to just push content up on your Google image search or your Google search. They will produce articles about you. They will try to post additional photos of you for the same thing you're saying, pushing old stories down. But the people that want to find dirt on you spend the time going to page 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of your Google search,
Yeah.
because they know that there's companies out there to bury that information. So the way around that is not to hire necessarily a company to bury stuff, because if people really want to find it, they can. It's just to not put that stuff up. Don't post that stuff. Don't put up the image that you regret. I joked with friends in college, if I could do a business over again, I would design a breathalyzer for your cell phone.
Really?
Sure. If you said, I'm going out with friends tonight to go drinking, and I know I'm going to have a couple drinks, and by 11 o'clock, I'm probably not going to be in a condition to drive. If you can't drive, why would you post something and post a picture?
That would save a lot of people.
Right? Before you can do a social media post, nope, you're under the influence. You can't post on social media.
Oh, that'd be dope.
Next morning, you want to do it? Go ahead. You can post the next morning if you think it's still a good idea.
Yeah.
But you're not going to have a few drinks in you at that point. You're not going to be in front of friends trying to impress somebody else. So if you want a business idea, breathalyzer for the cell phone.
That would be dope, actually. I will say, because people who watch this are going to kill me in real life. We don't have clout to tell somebody like, yo, put your phone down, don't record me. They're not going to listen to us. They're going to be like, yo, it's my phone, get out of here. Like,
so I totally get that. You don't want to be in a position to be scolding your friends and telling them what to do with their phone. Maybe just surround yourself with people that also want to protect their image and reputation going forward, and all collectively say, I know I'm going to have a lot more fun if I'm not worried that you're going to post something later on that has something in the background. I'm going to have more fun if I know that somebody isn't going to go viral because of something stupid that night. Now, you might have those other parties that you want to hang out with other friends. You can't say anything to them, but keep the people in your core having your same kind of values and protecting yourself, because if you all look out for each other, you should be looking out for them too, just as a friend.
Okay. That's solid. How do you feel being a wordsmith? Like, you're the equivalency to a boxer. Like, somebody trying to get into an argument with you is like somebody trying to fight like Canelo or like a trained professional. It's like, yo, you're not going to win.
I appreciate you saying it, but part of the training or skill is to be able to talk like you know what you're talking about, even if you don't really know what you're talking about. So when I had to go teach 8th graders reading and writing, I had to get up there and pretend like I could explain all the different concepts that they needed to know. And I also had to pretend that I knew what I was doing as a teacher. Because teaching isn't like just walking around. It's not like having a conversation with the two of you. Teaching 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, that's hard. So you fake it in your own life a lot of the time. When you're a lawyer, you're able to take the time in almost every situation to research, to prepare, to write ahead of time, to practice, so that when you're getting up and talking, it isn't the first time around. Some of it is different, but for the most part, you get a chance to have some kind of at-bats. And if you do enough at-bats, you start to figure out how to say it and how to do it in an effective way. But it doesn't mean you're not going to get beat. I've gotten beat plenty of times.
By like regular people, though, not by lawyers. Because that's a boxer going against a boxer. A loss is a loss. My
wife is not a lawyer. She beats me in arguments all the time.
Yeah, that's a good answer. If she's watching. What's subject did you teach when you were teaching?
I taught what they now call ELA, English Language Arts. It was, English class, writing class. And then I taught 12th grade constitutional law. They used the fact that I was an attorney, and they had a program where law school students came in to teach basically your basic constitutional rights to 12th graders who were about to go off into the world. And I was the advisor for one semester, and then I taught the course for the second semester.
Would you say debating a 12th grader is worse than debating like on your job, like trying to convince?
There's nothing worse than 8th graders.
Yeah.
8th graders are the absolute worst.
Yeah.
And the 8th graders who are bad, and I don't mean bad like they're going out and doing bad things. They're just difficult people to deal with. They're stressful. They are full of hormones. They are not paying attention. They're bouncing off the walls. Some of them are sleeping in class. Some of them are absolutely frantic and neurotic in class, just all over the place. And a lot of times, I think when you get to the 7th, 8th grade year, you start to figure out, do I like school? Do I want to do this and actually learn some stuff? Or do I not give a damn and I'm not really paying attention? And it just depends on what the day is, because you might be one type of student one day and different another day.
Yeah.
And then you get 30 of them. So I think 8th graders are the worst or hardest. 12th graders, you get to the point where they're looking out and saying, I'm about to go pay rent. I might have a car. I get a job. I might move out on my own. I might be going to college. And there's adult responsibilities that comes with that. My wife likes to say adulting is hard. It's a hard thing to go out and start doing all this on your own.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point, you start paying attention to people that are telling you, when you go out on the street, you don't have to respond to a police officer that says, hey, can I talk to you for a second? When you get pulled over, you don't have to do all the things that they tell you to. You have certain rights. So a lot of that class was focused on, hey, what happens if I get in trouble? What happens that way?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you chose to be a teacher. There's not too many teachers that I had in like grade school that actually chose to be a teacher. It was more so like, yeah, I wanted to do this, and I found out it was too hard, and I was just like, you know what? Teacher is a career that I could do that's a lot less like studying wise, school wise. They've always been like, yeah, I feel that what I wanted to do, so now I'm a teacher.
I think a lot of people go into teaching in the beginning or think they're going to go into teaching, not realizing how hard it is.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of burnout in teaching because of the stress, but when people go to school to teach, when they get an education degree, when they get a master's degree, they go to school for a while. So all your teachers may have chosen to do it. Some of them may not have done it as a second career or as a change in their career. They all chose to do it. The miraculous thing is that even after having you as a student, they stuck around and they were still teachers after that.
Yeah, which is crazy, man. Nah, I'm playing. I was a mid student.
Yeah.
I showed up late and I didn't really talk. That was it. I was a shy kid. So surviving me is not like surviving anybody else.
Do you show up on time now?
Yeah, I show up on time now.
What taught you to show up on time?
I just got older and was just like, I'm gonna get fired from my job.
Okay, so consequences for it,
Yeah.
right? Consequences for starting things on time. When somebody's late to something where you say, I need you to be here at this time, does it piss you off? In certain situations?
Yes. Yeah.
Not like late to the party, late to my house for dinner, but business related things.
Oh, yeah. Business related stuff? Yeah.
So the way that you can be a great teacher is teach 8th graders the concept of being timely, of being prompt, because kids don't really appreciate or care about the concept of time the same way that you do. How can you get kids in 8th grade to think about money? You're probably thinking now about, how do I save a certain amount of money? How do I make a certain amount of money? What do I do with it? Can I invest in it? If you try to teach that to most 8th graders, it's math. I don't want to deal with it. I don't have a job now. I don't need to pay that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some age where it clicks. And you can be the greatest teacher in the world if you can find the younger kids and make it click before it normally would.
Okay. Do you have any recommendations for that? Since being a teacher,
I think
like you could have did something better?
Personal finance. That would be the thing I think most people should start to learn much earlier. Anybody can be a teacher of personal finance as long as you have some basic understanding of it, because you're passing it on to people that don't know as much as you. You don't have to be an economist. You don't have to be a banker. You can teach people to spend less than they earn and save money on the side just by your practice, by your behavior. And I think the worst thing for young kids now is that they don't have an appreciation of how money works, where it goes, how much stuff costs.
Yeah.
How old were you when you started figuring out life's expensive?
I was actually pretty young. I worked really, really young.
How old were you when you worked?
Me?
Yeah.
I was 14.
If you can get somebody to work at 14, think about how different your viewpoint is about money than people when you were 14 years old.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of people my age now that are just figuring things out that I've been doing. And I'm like, where have you guys been?
Mm-hmm.
But I understand now it's because a lot of people just wait to work until they absolutely have to.
Yep.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I only did it because I really, really value independence, and I don't like when people tell me no. So I was like, I need to find a job as soon as possible so I can get what I want whenever I want. And I was able to find one doing live sound gigs. And with that, I was like, okay, cool. I don't have bills right now, so I'm going to try to save as much as I can while still also having money to spend at the same time so that I can move out as soon as possible.
Yeah. And make choices.
Yeah.
When you don't have to pay for your stuff, you'll go watch a movie that's got anybody in it. You don't care what the plot is. You'll get the biggest popcorn, the biggest soda, all the candy. Mom and dad are paying for it, or my friend's paying for it. When you earn the money, you're not going to watch crappy movies.
Yeah.
You're sneaking some candy in your pockets to get into the movie because you earned it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're spending your time, your energy. It's different. I think it gives you a different sense of satisfaction in all of the things that you do when you have to put your own time and money and effort into it.
Mm-hmm. Last teacher question. Is it true that there's certain stuff that you can and cannot teach just based off of curriculum? They're like, you have to stick to the script, I guess, and teach them this.
Are you talking about political stuff like we're hearing a lot about in the country now, or are you talking about a curriculum?
No, like a curriculum. So say history class, they're just like, yeah, we're going to teach you the World War II, and then we're going to skip all the way to something else. Or
Yeah. One of the craziest things I learned when I was a teacher, which I didn't know was a thing until I actually started teaching. When you sit down in a class and your teacher's starting to teach you, he or she probably has already designed your final exam. So when you're sitting down and learning step 1 of 1,000 steps in this course, they already know at the end, I'm going to be quizzing them on this thing. I'm going to be testing them on these concepts. And the way they build the curriculum is, okay, if I have this many weeks and I got to put this much material in, here's what I have to teach each week. And the lesson planning happens day after day, week after week, month after month. A really good teacher who's been in the same class for a few years, they've got their whole course mapped out by the day, and they might make tweaks to it. But when they sit down day 1 of teaching you, they probably know what they're testing you on 9 months later. So think about when you're a teacher, you have to start at the end and then what they call backwards plan. And that was mind-blowing to me. I don't know why it was such a complex thing or was surprised, but somebody said, yeah, here's what the final exam has to look like. Now you got to teach. So you got to figure out how to teach them the things that you know will be on the final exam. There is a curriculum, like you're saying, there's standards that are laid out for, especially for courses like math or science, because in Massachusetts you have to take the MCAS. So there's certain standards you have to achieve. You have wiggle room and creativity. There's some really good teachers that can make the same material much more interesting than bad teachers. But yes, generally there's a framework of what you have to teach.
Okay, so it's more so the government that is kind of quote unquote failing the students because they're not teaching those finance stuff in classes. Because it's like you have to make sure they know a specific amount of stuff, and it's like, yo, I don't have time to teach them finances even if I want to.
You said the government is failing people. That's like rolling a hand grenade into the conversation. There's lots of people who would, yes, government is screwing everybody. Government is bad in education. There's other people who would say it's not the government doing it, it's teachers unions. There's other people who would say it's not teachers unions that are doing it, but it's that kids at home aren't getting the right core life lessons, so they don't respect their teachers. And then there's other people who would say, given the age and society and social media today, we're all screwed, right? There's a lot of different opinions on it. Yes, there are really good teachers that teach very well and can teach effectively. Just because somebody doesn't turn out to pass the MCAS or do well on a particular test, it doesn't mean that they had all bad teachers. It might have been effort. It might have been something going on at home. They might have been dealing with trauma. There's a lot of reasons. I guess that's the best lawyer answer I can give. You can't blame one organization or one entity.
All right, there's enough blame to go around. That makes
right.
sense. Yeah, that makes the most sense. See, I was trying to get you. I thought I almost had you. I thought I had him. But...
I know how to avoid the landmines.
Yeah. Okay. No. So I want to ask. Well, pivot to more so tech in the field of like being a lawyer. How are they integrating as a whole? The industry integrating tech.
There's a bunch of different areas where tech comes into play as attorneys, especially really big companies, really big law firms. If you're in a case like the crypto guy, Sam Bankman-Fried. A lot of people heard about that case. He ran FTX, and there's charges against him saying he defrauded people. In that type of case, imagine every text message, every email, every crypto transaction, all of those things are documents. The documents start to stack up. You might have a case like that with hundreds of millions of pages of documents. So there's companies that have been developed that now will take all of your 100 million pages of documents, scan them all, and then start doing keyword searches for certain terms. And if they can do that, imagine how long it would take to hire attorneys, billing you by the hour to go through those documents, or ChatGPT and you click a button and it can start to search all those documents in minutes.
Yeah.
So technology can help reduce the workload for folks. It also has a huge role in criminal cases nowadays. The way that technology helps people can also hurt them in a criminal case. All the different ways you can communicate with your friends, all the different ways you can send photos can come back to bite people in a criminal case. And the government in some cases can search for and find and extract that information, and that can hurt a person if they're getting prosecuted. Video and surveillance footage. When I started as a prosecutor in 2006, and if a detective said to you, the business has a camera out in front of it, that was a miracle. That people in 2006 would have video cameras, or that a homeowner would have a camera on the front of their house. That was unheard of. Nest camera was not a widespread thing back in 2006.
Yeah.
Now, if something happens in a residential neighborhood, as part of the standard procedure, the detectives will walk the street doing what's called a canvass, and they will canvass all the houses to look at the front doors. What do you think they're looking at?
Cameras.
They're looking for the ring. They're looking for the cameras. They might look up in the corner of your houses, and all those things can be used to help solve crimes or defend people if they're wrongfully accused.
Do they have to subpoena to ask if they can get the footage?
So they can ask the homeowner to voluntarily turn it over, which they can do. They can subpoena the homeowner to bring it in, or they could do a search warrant for footage stored by the company that owns it. Google Nest, Ring, those sort of things.
Okay.
Yep.
Are you worried about tech and just like somebody may be doing the same thing you're doing and they're just like, I'm an expert now because I have ChatGPT, and it's like you're on year one. I have actual real life experience. Like it probably would be better to go to you.
I'm not worried in my particular area of law because what I do is kind of strange. Criminal defense, you can't really chat GPT it. When somebody calls on their worst day and they're crying and they're saying, I think my wife has stolen money and ran away with my child, or we get this call sometimes, there's a video going around school. My kid's 14, and there's a video going around school that shows him having sex with somebody else, and she's 13. That could potentially get that kid in trouble. When people call us in those situations, you can't chat GPT, how do I get myself out of that jam?
Gotcha.
So for our area, it doesn't really affect me that much. There are lawyers who are starting to use it in bigger cases. There's a case against, I think it's Avianca Airlines. This attorney was suing an airline because of an injury to a guy. One of those food carts hit him in the leg or something and injured him. Mm-hmm. And the attorney who was suing on his behalf used ChatGPT to write his legal brief and argument to the court. And one of the court clerks started researching what he had written, and he realized that a whole bunch of the legal cases that were cited in the brief were BS. Am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, you are.
Total bullshit. Mm-hmm. So the judge actually called the lawyer out and said, there are 6 cases that you cite in this legal brief. They don't even exist. They never occurred. There's no such thing as this case. And when you're citing something in a legal brief, you can't just say, read it in this book. You have to say, read it in this book on page 311, paragraph 4. Mm-hmm. So this guy was super specific in what he was citing, and it was total bullshit.
Wow.
Because ChatGPT isn't foolproof, and ChatGPT doesn't edit your stuff. And until they can figure out a way to do that, to have that kind of nuanced understanding, what's the point I'm trying to make? How do I say it effectively? How will somebody hear this word versus that word? They haven't figured that out yet with ChatGPT. It's a great step to begin with. You could say, if I'm starting a legal brief, give me the top 100 cases that have to do with this issue. And then if there's bullshit in there, oh, that's bullshit. But then you can look up the case. But that saves huge amounts of time finding those cases in the first place.
Okay. So it's kind of like the Wikipedia of information, where it's like you can get general stuff, but you really got to fact check everything.
So you say Wikipedia, and I think about Wikipedia as not a primary source, but kind of a secondary source.
Yeah.
ChatGPT isn't going to get cited, hopefully, in your paper, and not going to get cited in somebody's legal brief, but it's a starting point. So yes, Wikipedia can be a starting point, but then the most important part of Wikipedia is the bottom. When they have those footnotes in Wikipedia, on the bottom it says, here's where we got our information. And those are primary sources, newspapers, articles, sometimes research. You can affect Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. You can go in and change somebody's entry in Wikipedia. No source, no citation. That's why if you see a celebrity do something stupid, sometimes people mess with their Wikipedia page right afterwards. Mm-hmm. But on a legal case, you could then look up what's the original source of this case. Can I look that up and find it? It's not going to get tinkered with by people. So yes, it's a good starting place.
Got you. Do you feel like tech has helped the field, or has it hindered it? Because
the field of law?
Yeah, because somebody had the wrong case on ChatGPT.
I don't think it's a help or hinder thing. I think it's the world is changing dramatically. Mm-hmm. And whether you like the way technology is working or you don't, you have to adjust. Okay. You have to be able to adjust. So you can say, I don't want to use video in my cases. You're screwing your clients if you say that. Mm-hmm. You can say, for example, I don't want to do document review, e-discovery, right? Condensing all those 100 million pages down into trying to find material in those pages. I don't want to have to hire a company to do it with technology. I'm just going to get my lawyer to do it. All right, your job is to then look through 100 million pages. Good luck. You have to adapt. Otherwise, clients won't hire you. So it's a necessary evil, but also a benefit in a lot of cases. But it's changing or not, whether we like it or not.
Okay. Do you feel like there would ever be a time where there's just robot lawyers against another robot lawyer? No, it's going to always be.
I think your car might get fixed by a mechanic, but I would also want, by a robot mechanic. but I also want a human being to check the tire pressure or make sure that the nuts are, tight on the side of the wheel before I go back out on the street.
Mm-hmm.
It might be that a robot opens up a wound and an incision or stitches something up or has a mechanism to do something very delicate that human hands may not be able to do. But I also want a human being reading my medical chart, checking my blood pressure, and doing all those things that can just confirm that the robot's doing it the right way.
Gotcha.
I think lawyers will end up having a lot of stuff done by AI technology. I don't think you're going to say, right, you're in trouble, your life is on the line, you need to convince 12 strangers in the jury box that you didn't do it. I don't think you're going to hire a robot to do it. Just don't see that happening. Not in our lifetime.
Shoot, I had a question on the top of my head, and it's gone now. Damn.
Ooh.
It was a follow-up question on that. Shoot.
It's all right.
A follow-up question with it's tech, lawyers. There's a lot of people. Go ahead.
Here's one question for you guys. Do you use technology in any way to find lawyers? Right? If you needed a lawyer, what would you do?
Google.
So Google is its own form of technology for lawyers too. People use SEO, marketing, they put Google pages up. If Google is your first step to find a lawyer, lawyers need to adapt to realize that their Google page, their website, all of those things are important to show who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that you went to a website to look for a lawyer. What are you looking at when you go to the website? Like what would be important to you?
A real face.
Okay.
A real face, how many years they've been working, how nice their website is.
Mm-hmm.
That counts for me because it tells you how much money they put into making that website. I feel like most professional websites have a bio where they tell you where they've gone to school, where they worked, what they've done, so you can at least fact check that, check their LinkedIn.
So nowadays, lots of law firms and lots of lawyers have websites just like you're talking about. But there's also a bunch of lawyers in very specialized areas that don't even have a website. If you said, give me the top 50 murder defense attorneys in the state, there's a bunch of them that have websites, but there's a bunch that might have a very basic landing page and nothing else. Because their work, their reputation kind of speaks for itself. People pass along the name, people make the referral. But if you're coming out of law school now, you can't just jump into that old school lawyer style. You can't just say, oh, my name, my reputation, I'm going to rely on it. You are the potential client, all your friends, all your generation. So as that generation comes in, if the website's so important, lawyers got to adapt and put money into the website. Got to make it look nice, got to make the bio look nice to show their experience. And that is a change in the legal field over the last, 15 years or so.
How are you staying ahead of that?
Well, we have a website. I think it looks pretty good.
It does.
It leaves people with an impression that we are the people that you're supposed to call when something bad happens. We make it really accessible for them to reach us. So we have an emergency phone number. They can call it pretty much on call anytime. There's also a way that somebody can send us a message through the website that's typically, hey, I have a general issue. Can you call me at such and such phone number? And then we give some examples, not of the nature of cases. I'm not giving your details out, but I'm saying, here are the types of things that we do. And if it's anything like this, you can call us. And we give a bio. We talk about our background and our experience and kind of explain to people that we have worked in organizations and worked for people that rely on us when really bad things happen.
Okay. Who created your website for you? Sorry.
We had a young man that had been a brother of a friend of ours who had a background in tech and web development. And his side hustle at the time, which he then went on to work in a technology company, doing some operations with them. His side hustle was website design. So when we started out, I asked friends. I said, who can do a website? And this guy said, my brother would be great. And talk to him. So he did the website. It was great.
Okay. Do you guys hire software engineers or just lawyers, or who works with you guys?
He's trying to work for you.
Yeah. We have people that we subcontract out because a lot of the stuff that we do, we don't have hired employees to do it. We subcontract with IT people, forensic examiners, investigators, lawyers, psychologists, just depending on what the case is. So if you got in your bar fight, your situation we've used as the example, we might hire an investigator to go to the bar the next day, talk to the bouncer, ask if they have video, talk to the general manager, check credit card receipts, check the bar tab, If there's some regulars that were there and he gets their names, maybe he goes and interviews the regulars. Maybe he asks if anybody was hanging out having a cigarette the night before. Maybe they, float around on the street. Investigators do a lot of that type of work. We have a couple of cases where people find really bad things on a work computer. They think it's an employee in the company. They got to find out who did it. Forensic examiners get hired to look through your computer, whether it's your personal one or your business one, and say, oh yeah, the last time that this bad stuff came on the computer, this person had the computer and here were the keystrokes and here's where they logged in. So we use them in that situation. So we deal with a lot of subspecialties. We don't hire them ourselves. We find the right person and then we refer the work out.
Okay. I gotta ask, out of curiosity, what is the craziest story, if you can tell, that you've had? Maybe it's like the statute of limitations already passed, so you can mention it.
So the craziest, I have some crazy stories. We're working on a case now that I consider to be the most difficult that I'm working on, that involves a family that had a baby that was born at Brigham and Women's Hospital. And the baby was born and survived 12 days and then passed away, unfortunately. So this baby died. And the family had the baby baptized in the hospital room. And when they left the hospital, the nurses were going to take the baby down to the morgue so they could go get the funeral home to come pick up the child and they could have a funeral. 4 days later, when they sent the funeral home to the hospital to pick up the baby, she was gone.
Like the body was gone?
Gone. Never been found.
Huh.
And over the course of the next couple of days, the hospital said they tried to look for where she was. The family ended up going to law enforcement, who then conducted a police investigation. They also were not able to recover the body, but they learned a lot about how the child went missing. And just the idea that you could show up at the hospital, something so traumatic could happen to you, your loved one is there, and she passes away and you want to bury her and grieve, and you can't do that now. It's heartbreaking to think about. So that's on the very depressing, complicated, intense, and type of situation that you would just never imagine it. If somebody said this is the premise to a book or a movie, oh no, that would never happen. You don't lose bodies. We had a case when I was a very young prosecutor. One of the jobs that you can apply for is to be on something called the Homicide Response Unit. You get a pager, you get a car for 7 days in a row. If there's anything bad that happens that might lead to the death of somebody, or might lead to police having to do something in the middle of the night, you might get called to give approval or to show up and also give information to your bosses the next day. Mm-hmm. So I get a phone call to go in the middle of the night to a place where somebody had kidnapped and then barricaded inside of a house with a couple of the kidnapped victims. And the police were on the street and they'd closed off the street, and they wanted me to review a search warrant in the back of one of those police wagons. Mm-hmm. And reviewing a search warrant when you're a prosecutor is reading it to make sure that there's probable cause, that the police can get authority to go in and search that house. So I read the thing in the back of the police car, and then you give it to the detective, and they have to give it to a judge who's on call, and then the judge approves it. And if they approve it, the police have the authority to go into that house. It was cold. I was in the back of the van. It was really, really chilly. I finish supervising the search warrant or authorizing it, and I give it to the detective, and they give it to a judge. Somebody gives me a hot cup of coffee, and a second later I hear boom, and the cars shake, and all of the cars on the street have their car alarms start to go off. Mm-hmm. And I peek my head around, still holding the cup of coffee, and look out, and the SWAT team is going into the house, and they are throwing flashbang grenades into the front door of the house because they just kicked down the door to go find the kidnapped victims. Yeah. Now I'm 26 years old, sitting in the back of the car. I've graduated law school like a year ago. I'm freezing. I got a cup of coffee, and I just put my signature on a document, and all of a sudden, these guys with machine guns.
That's fast.
Yeah.
God,
yeah.
Damn.
26, 27. It was something like that. And you're at the point where it's like, oh shit, this is real. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't think that this meant that.
Your first taste of adulting like hit you real hard.
And it's the type of job where you don't get paid a lot, but you get that type of responsibility, and it's crazy and overwhelming when it first happens.
Sure. Damn.
I never thought, because like you hear strange noises all the time, and I've definitely heard some of those like big bangs in the night, like with car alarms going off, and I'm like, that's so weird, and then I just brush it off. But it could be someone. Typically,
it's not going to be those types of things in a residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
And you know, the idea of the police being authorized to go into your house while you're in there, it takes a lot of different steps to get there. It's not an easy thing. So don't be worried the police are kicking down everybody's door in the middle of the night with flashbangs. You know, in every single case. This was one of those rare, strange situations, but I remember it being a pivotal point where you realize, the joke is we're playing with live ammunition, that people use that comment. This is a real ammunition situation. Mm-hmm. When you're doing something like that, you realize the impact of what you do and what you say and what your signature means. And that type of responsibility can be overwhelming and enticing. It keeps people in that job for a while, but it's stressful.
Yeah. Heavy
stress.
Would you say it's worth it?
Ask me in 30 years.
Okay. Are you the type of guy that is like chasing for money? We should probably ask that first. Like, is the money the motive for you for a lot of things?
The money is important now because it's a part of business. You have to bring clients in the door that helps pay the bills and pay your rent and feed mouths and have your partners and their families, earn a living. That's what we're all trying to do it for. The difference, I think, now is that you can see some benefit to the harder you work, the more you get, which is different from straight salary government employee jobs. There's not a lot of opportunity for overtime. There's no bonus opportunity. You can't take a risk and make a higher reward. So the money's different. It plays a different role now in what you do. And the longer you're going on, you want to try to make the business grow. And for a lot of people, the revenue is the measure of business. But ultimately, I'm happier doing this. I'm more energized. I feel better. Life is better because being a government employee and doing it for that long can be a real grind. The work is super important and intense. And a lot of people stick in it for a while because the mission is so important. And I respect everybody that makes that choice because the mission in those roles can be really, really important.
Okay. If you guys want somebody who is not going to be price gouging when you call them, hit up Greg Henning. All right? Because we all hear about, I feel like we all have that feeling towards lawyers where it's just like, they're just money hungry. I hit them up. They're going to charge me an arm and a leg to solve my problem. So, hey, relieve some stress, he's not one of those people. Hopefully that helps y'all out. Hopefully you guys are like, oh, you know what? It gives me more of an entice to go to you because that's all I think about when I hear lawyers. I'm just like, yeah, I mean, they're just price gouging because they know they're the only ones who can probably do it.
Yeah. Or they won't help me because I can't afford them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing.
There is that part. I will say that in other parts of your life, for instance, if you went and got knee surgery, do you look at the hospital bill?
Yes.
You look at the hospital bill at the end, that what part's covered by insurance, or you look at what the bottom line cost of your surgery is?
I look at the bottom line, how much it costs. Yeah.
So you'd see in those cases, if you get some type of surgery, it could be $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, you might owe a $200 copay, plus you paid your insurance, right?
Yep.
There isn't legal insurance the same way that there is medical insurance.
Okay.
So you can't prepare for your knee injury. You can't pay your premiums every single month to get that lawyer in those situations unless you go and buy an insurance policy that does that. There's not a lot of people that want to do it because most of the time people walk around thinking, I'm never going to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be the one that gets that situation thrown into my life.
Gotcha.
There are some situations where you do get an attorney through insurance. If you get in a car accident and it's your fault, your insurance through your car insurance company most likely will pay for you to be defended in the case. That's what you're getting with your insurance. But in other situations like criminal defense, nobody buys murder defense attorney insurance. Yeah. Nobody thinks they're going to get caught. Nobody says, I'm going to get in trouble and end up in the newspaper. My wife's going to want to divorce me. My kids are going to hate me. How do I buy insurance for that? It doesn't really exist on the market.
That sounds like terrible insurance. It's like an admission of guilt.
Well, it isn't the admission of guilt. It's that you might appear that way. Mm-hmm. Somebody accuses you of something, whether you did it or not. If somebody writes about it on the internet, or somebody tweets about it or texts about it or sends you a message about it, everyone just believes it.
Yeah. So
a lot of people get jammed up in those situations when they didn't actually do anything.
How do you become a DEA? Well, you ran for DEA.
You can become a prosecutor. So in Boston, in Massachusetts, mm-hmm. prosecutors, the one that represent victims and they go to court and hold people accountable for crimes, they're called assistant district attorneys. And they're in every county in Massachusetts. So you work for your county. We're in Suffolk County. you could apply to the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office to become an ADA, an Assistant District Attorney. But there's one district attorney, and that's the elected official. It was Dan Conley, then it was Rachel Rollins, John Pappas was in the middle for a bit, and now it's Kevin Hayden.
Okay. And you ran for
that job in 2018 for district attorney.
Okay.
Yep.
How was that process? Like, could anybody apply? Do you have to have a law degree?
In Suffolk County, I believe in Massachusetts and in Suffolk County, you do need to be an attorney to do it. So anybody could be an attorney and then run for it. You wouldn't have to be a criminal defense attorney to do it. You could be a different type of attorney and still run. How was it? You're talking about running for office?
Both running for office and the process. Like, there's had to have been so much headaches. What's the timeline for all of that? The
timeline would be, if you ever think about running for office, email me and I will talk you out of it.
Talk you out of it.
Yep. The process now is different than it was 20 years ago or when you were in school learning about elections, not only because of the attention that's paid nowadays to it, but because everybody is their own armchair journalist and everybody has an opinion, and often a bad opinion or an uninformed opinion, and everybody can share it. And part of that sharing means attacking. So there is a huge feeling of division, I think, in the country, in part because social media or the direction of the country or whatever. So if you decide to run for office, you're saying, the water seems to be getting a little bit hotter than it was 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, it was like a low simmer. Now the water is boiling out of the pot. And if you say, I want to stick my finger in that water and see how it tastes. 10, 15 years ago, you might have gotten a little bit of a burn, but you could still taste it and get out of it and say, all right, I don't really love this. But you are sticking your finger into a boiling pot of water now to do it. Some people, they enjoy it. But I think for the average person who's running or decides to run, you don't realize what's involved, and it is intense.
Okay.
What are you going to run for?
Huh?
What are you going to run for?
I'm not running for anything. No, I'm staying strictly into tech and doing this podcast. I'm not really into politics. I mean, I'll ask questions. I feel like I'll probably get owned in every conversation. It's like, yo, I'm just speaking as an average person, what I feel like. But they'll be like, yeah, that's absolutely wrong. Like, you'll school me and be like, yo, that has nothing to do with anything. Like, it's like, okay.
It's frustrating that there's probably not a lot of people right now who would say, I want to go run for office. I want to go do something. But I don't think it's just a blame the younger generation thing. Can you name a politician that you respect? Active.
No.
Active?
Right?
No.
I'm talking about senators, congresswomen, congressmen, the president, local officials. There are good people doing it. Maybe they aren't the ones that are in the forefront of the news, so you're not seeing them in your news feeds. But there's good people out there that are doing it. They're not elevated in some reason now because of what's going on. The people who are out front and center, the biggest names, the ones you've seen all the time, I say to you, do you respect any of them? And you're like, no, I don't. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That we can't find somebody out there that we respect.
Yeah, it's also weird, too, because I feel like if we say somebody, then they're going to feel like that means you agree with everything they say. And it's like, I don't agree with everything they say, but I do respect some of the points they make and the fact that they actually take a stand on something. So that's even weirder.
You don't own every single policy position of a person.
Yeah.
You can say, I agree with them for this, or I respect them for that. You might even respect somebody that has a different opinion than you do, which is shocking. Now we think if the person thinks by a different party, by a different type of thinking, not only can I not respect them, I can't even talk with them or be friends with them. That's how dividing it is. I don't think it was the same way 20, 30 years ago. It wasn't all good, but I think the level of discourse, the nature of communication, the tone, civility, it allowed people to engage. I could disagree with you and still consider you a friend.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, you've heard about families breaking up because of Republican, Democrat, politics over the dinner table. That's too intense.
That cancel culture has really taken over.
It is. Cancel culture is a part of it, but this, I think, is more my core opinions on things now are a reflection. This is how people think. They're a reflection of my values. And if you don't share my values, you must not share my politics. Or if you don't share my politics, you must not have the same values that I do. And people jump to that conclusion. And if they jump to that conclusion, then they hold it against the person. It's not like I like the Celtics and you like, the Lakers or Yankees, Red Sox. if you like the Yankees, I don't want you at my house. If
Yeah.
you say you like Yankee players, I don't want you to be around my children. But it isn't like that because people take politics to a much more core level.
Yeah, it's always weird because like a Republican will say something like, "They're gonna kill me too." Like all my friends, but
Yeah.
like a Republican Party will say something. You're just like, "Yo, that don't sound too bad." You guys like what he said kind of made sense. Like I'm not agreeing with everything he said, but some of his bullet points, it was like, it's solid. Like what he said was solid. Like it's fair. And they're just like, nah, bro. It's like you can't just. The message is. You can like the message. You be like, if you don't like the messenger, you can still like the message.
Yeah.
And yeah, people don't. They can't. What's it called?
It's very binary thinking, very
Yeah.
like black and white, good versus
Can't
bad.
separate the two.
Like they can't separate the two. And I kind of get it too, especially with like technology that we have. It's so easy to get into a feedback loop of your own values and opinions because you can find people out there who have almost like 90% of what you value as well. Whereas like at home, you might have like different perspectives and that can get tiring arguing with the people who are supposed to be your home family unit, the unit that's supposed to share your values in order to create harmony, right? But then like that doesn't work out. So you go to the internet and on the internet, you can find groups or like organizations and communities where they have pretty much all your value systems. So you're like, well, why am I going to waste my time fighting with people who don't want to see my side when I can just be with people who think exactly like me and that feed into it?
I agree with what you're saying, and I think the idea of, have you heard the term echo chamber?
Yeah. Same thing I was thinking.
Idea of sitting in the echo chamber, but not just sitting there, choosing to be in that environment. My mom used to say to me, when you go and talk to somebody that you don't know, your job isn't to convince them, it's to educate yourself. So when you go to speak to somebody that might have a different opinion or come from a different background, it's not to convince them of your political position on a specific policy. Don't go into the conversation thinking, I got to change that person's mind or I got to make sure they think the way that I do. Go into it thinking, I wonder what that person thinks and why they think that and what their background is.
Yeah, that's a bar, man. That's a great ass line.
That's Betsy Henning. Yeah, it was my mom. She said, when you go into a conversation, you're trying to learn, not teach them something. Don't try to educate them, educate yourself.
Okay.
Or don't try to convince them, educate yourself, because you'll do it in any conversation. Friends, family, you go into the conversation, you think, I have to inform them about something. I got to write this thing. I got to make sure that they know what's up, as opposed to, why are they thinking that? Where are they coming from?
Got you. Okay.
And that holds a lot of value too, because like you mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was on camera. Yeah, it was on camera where you're like, you are trained to know what you're talking about. And that's a lot of people out there, and especially a lot of politicians too. I think a lot of times people like reach for this authority figure that knows all and knows everything and always knows the right choice. But a lot of the times, like, we're just people. No matter how far up in like your reputation or level of profession you go, you're still human at the end of the day. So when you ask the question, like, is there anyone that you like really respect in politics? It's hard because they all have a human element to them. And it's like, oh, well, and I think a lot of people don't want to see that with people who are leading a whole country. But I think until like we can recognize that with these leaders in these positions of power and realize they're humans that are trying their best, trying to govern a whole country of like billions of people. Like it's not easy for sure. And they can go in with the best intentions, but there's a whole legal system that has layers and layers and layers of things that contribute to their decision makings, whether it progresses those decisions or blocks them. It gets very layered and complicated. And I feel like people just want things to be so simple, but
nothing simple.
Yeah. Or even if they are even if you can make it simple, like everything is as complex as it is simple at the same time.
The fact that everyone can dig up, disclose, make up, lie, talk shit about you online now, and it can be true or not, and that sticks as your reputation, I think dramatically changes the way that people are known. So think about Bill Clinton. I tell you, Bill Clinton, what do you think about he's president? What's the first thing you think about?
If he's president right now?
No. I'm just saying that President Bill Clinton, you have to...
First thing that pops into my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, the scandal.
All right. What was the scandal about?
You know, it was his secretary, him and his secretary were having an affair, and he based off
Monica
that.
Lewinsky. That,
All
my
right.
bad.
Yeah.
That's not the first thing I think of
Yeah.
when I hear Bill Clinton.
Yep.
Because I'm Haitian, so it's a little bit different.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Bill Clinton, you remember sex scandal? You remember Monica Lewinsky's name? She was an intern in the White House. Okay.
Mhm.
Bill Clinton was president right around the time the internet started to develop. And the only reason that you know about that stuff, not the only one, but the main one, is that internet reporters started covering the story and leaks and information started coming out. The Drudge Report, which is this right-wing report now, that was the organization that started having these stories come out where people learned that the president might have been involved in a sexual affair. Who was the president just before Bill Clinton?
Was it Bush?
Bush?
And who was the president before that?
I don't know.
And who was the president before that?
Yeah, no idea.
And it isn't because it's so long ago. It's because these things start to become sticky in your mind. Not just, oh, that's a name that I recognize, but bad things that they did. So Trump, if he had just left office, people may not have remembered him as all the bad things that they're probably going to remember him for now. But there's going to be an impeachment trial, an indictment and a criminal trial where he's going to have to stand trial. He's going to be the only president who potentially can get convicted of a felony after leaving office. Remember, Richard Nixon, who did some really bad stuff when he was in office, he got pardoned. So he got the slate wiped clean. When Gerald Ford became the next president, he said, you can't get prosecuted. And that was designed to help protect the country. That's not going to happen now. But the point is, the worst things about people now become stapled to their forehead for the rest of their life. And that becomes the reputation of that person. If that's the world you live in, why would you say, I want my son or daughter to go become a political candidate?
Gotcha.
If we tell our kids, I don't want you to be defined by the worst part of your life or the worst thing that you've ever done, why would you send them into a profession where that is how we define people?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. That makes sense.
So you think like technology does make things more complicated, at least for people in politics, as they go? Yeah.
I think it makes things more complicated for everybody, but you see it more in politics. But it happens in everybody's life. The number of people that might be viewing this who say, oh, somebody caught this on my phone. Somebody saw this text message, or I wasn't able to delete this contact from my phone. That happens to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a technology thing because of Donald Trump or, the president. It happens to everybody. And so technology becomes something that can have an interruption in everybody's life or can mess up everybody's life. But you read about it when somebody's high enough profile, that you see something happen like that.
Yeah. I also feel like with technology, like we're at a point in time where we are using it and like we're finding out we can find all this information from way back when now. But I think like it's also important to remember technology only became like incredibly accessible to the common people like around the time I feel like I was born, like in the 90s. So we're still like, I feel like we're still hitting that peak and we haven't like oversaturated yet. Whereas like the generations before, like after me, the younger ones, my nieces and nephews, they're growing up with technology and they've experienced it in a whole different way. So I wonder if like in 20 years, by the time I run for president, that tweet isn't going to matter as much to people because they're like, people used to say crazy stuff back when the internet started. Or
I wish that were the case, that maybe it dilutes the value of it in the future. I don't see that happening. I think it just becomes easier to access bad things that you did. I was just going to show how old I am. When I was growing up and I was watching a movie with my dad, if there was an actor or an actress that he didn't know in the movie, he'd say, go look that one up. And we had a book above the television that was the encyclopedia of movies. And it would list all the movies in alphabetical order, and it had the characters and the titles and the year it was made.
Never
wow.
heard of that.
Right? There is an encyclopedia. Do you know what an encyclopedia is?
Yeah.
Okay. You've seen it more like a historical thing than a book that you can look at stuff. But if you said, I want to know about, pick an animal, pick a car, pick whatever.
Yeah.
You look it up in an encyclopedia. You had to get up. You had to open the book. You had to know how to read.
Mm-hmm.
You had to be able to turn the page and know what page to go to. So you had to have vision. Like to look in a book. Yes, there's some in Braille, but there's these obstacles to obtaining the information. Mm-hmm. Now, a friend of mine who's blind can go, Siri, tell me what blah, 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 blah. And he can find that information out in seconds.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, except your kid can also look up pornography in seconds.
Yeah.
And you can also say something dirty or say something wrong or a lie about somebody and tweet it, and the world sees it in that same amount of time.
Yeah.
So it's great, but it's also fucked up.
Yeah.
You were on a Netflix documentary thing.
Documentary, yes.
Yeah.
What?
How did that work? Because I don't know if did they pay you to be on it?
No.
They didn't even ask permission. They were just like, let's just.
The documentary wasn't about me. It was about a guy who was being prosecuted for a case in Suffolk County. At the same time he was being re-prosecuted for the case, I was running for DA.
Yep.
So the Netflix documentary was about the case, but it used the campaign as part of the backdrop. So what they do is they show up and they say, we're going to be filming. Will you sign this waiver? All the other candidates are signing it. You should sign it too. So you sign it. Mm-hmm. And then 3 years later, you're in a Netflix documentary. And it's not like they're cutting you a check. It's just, if you were in the background of some place where they were filming part of the documentary, they might come up to you and have you sign a waiver as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was watching. I was like, I don't know if he got paid for this.
No.
But I was just like,
no.
It seemed like it didn't work in your favor. Because it seemed more like they were trying to frame it like,
yes,
he's working with the police. So if he becomes the DA during this time, you're not going to get a chance to get out of jail. So everybody should vote against him. And it was just like,
I had a friend call me afterwards who said, hey, did you know that you're the villain in a Netflix documentary?
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for that episode, you look at it and I know what is depicted in the episode is totally not reality. Mm-hmm. Things are taken out of context. Clips are spliced with pictures that didn't happen at the same time. People are seen doing things in an area where they're not actually doing anything. And you know what really happened. And so it was the first time I really had the alternate reality experience. I'm watching that. I see myself, but that's not true. That's not what happened.
Yeah.
Lots of people that we work with now have that same thing. They are accused of something that they not only had nothing to do with, but didn't even know was taking place. And then later on, somebody says, oh, Sammy was there. He did it. And then you show up in court. And then people write about you in the newspaper, on the internet. And you're like, but I wasn't there. That's not how it happened. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what really happened. It matters what people believe.
Yeah.
So the idea that a documentary made by Netflix is fictional, is made up, or is not realistic, once you live through it, you can say, oh, I get that it's not really how it went. Mm-hmm. But that's how it's displayed on TV.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a weird time. I think I had my appendix removed, and I was just watching Netflix stuff because I was like in bed rest. And I was like straight up the Leonardo DiCaprio meme. I was just like, wait, I know that guy.
Yeah.
I took a picture. I had send it to Charles. I sent it to Manny. I was like, yo, isn't that Greg? And they were just like, yo, that does look like him, but why would he be on Netflix? I was like, yo, I don't know, bro.
I had people that were friends of mine, friends of yours, that would go out and volunteer during the campaign, and they'd come back from some event or election day, and they'd say, people said this about you. Is that true? And I'm like, no. Why are they so angry? Why do they think this? It doesn't matter. It's not true, but that's what they believe. Mm-hmm. And some of those same guys you're talking about said that politics is fucked up. People don't, it's not true. They don't believe these things, do they? Yeah, they actually believe it. Either because they're misled or they have that position because they dislike you for some reason, and they then need to tear you down. So if you see that happening to somebody you know, somebody you love, somebody you respect, it's a wacky experience to go through it because it's not real, not realistic. But now there's a movie about it not being realistic. So I'll sit down with a client who says what's unfolding in this case is totally not true. It's totally not realistic. I don't know if you know what that's like. And I'll say, yeah, I know exactly what it's like. I'm the villain in a Netflix documentary.
That's forever up there too. It's like,
forever up there.
You guys could all check it out. It's like, I think it's 6 episodes, I believe.
It is it's called Trial 4, and I don't remember what episode it is. But it's 6 or 7 episodes, and the thing's called Trial 4.
Yeah. I think I also seen you in commercials as well. Do you have to pay for those commercials, or is it out of there just like, yo, we need...
It isn't commercials. You see me doing legal analysis on Channel 5, the local ABC affiliate.
Oh, okay. That's what it is.
Yeah. There are some attorneys that advertise on TV. Most of them are attorneys that have a large law firm that does personal injury law. If you're injured in an accident, call Joe Smith. If you get, you break your leg and something happens, call us. Those are the attorneys we were talking about in the beginning that you don't pay for, but they take a percentage of what you get back.
Okay.
So if you get in a car accident, you recover $100,000, that law firm might make $33,000, $35,000, $40,000. Those lawyers can make a lot of money.
Okay. Feel free to come up here whenever you want. Also, feel free to advertise up here if you want. Just let us know if you have like B-roll for like a commercial, we could clip it in somewhere or something.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll do.
Yeah.
I have a question. Yeah, so we hear about lawyers all the time on like the billboards, on radio. There's this guy that makes me laugh all the time. Like this guy, Top Dog Law, on the radio channel. He's like,
Yeah.
it is the funkiest like radio commercial I've heard from. Like that's a commercial for a lawyer. If you guys haven't heard it,
So
listen
say
to
the
your
name one more
lawyers.
time.
Top Dog Law.
All right. Now pause. Now everybody there who's got their phone or their computer is going to go on to Top Dog Law.
Yeah.
That guy is paying somebody, obviously, to monitor what sort of hits he's getting on his website. And he's getting hit rates just like in any other company. He's a lawyer who's selling his services. He may not be, I don't even know who the person is, but he may not be ridiculous or crazy or the way that it comes across, but the ad's stuck in your head
Yeah.
to the point that people are going to be looking it up right now.
Uh-huh.
It works in the law just like it does in other parts of
Hey,
business.
Greg Henning strategies.
Henning strategies.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, on that note too, it's like, what are some red flags that people should be aware of when looking for a lawyer? Like, not everything that we see on we don't know if an advertisement is meant to grab our attention or if they're really reputable. Are they saying that he's Top Dog Law, but then he's really a rapper and that's just his rap name? Like, what?
Most of the time in the legal field, you don't have people that are imposters. They're not really making it up. If they're advertising as a lawyer, they actually have to practice law. Otherwise, it's a crime. If you practice medicine, you practice law without a license, you'll at least be charged by the state. It may be civil versus criminal, but people aren't making it up to that degree. I'd say make sure that the person doesn't have a history of any sort of violation of what they call BBO regulations, Board of Bar Overseers. There's a website you can Google if anybody's ever been in trouble with the BBO. And if they have, there's a record of it that you can see that's a public record. And then ask people that you know that you trust about a person in a particular field. So lawyers often get connected by the 4th and 5th degree of separation. You don't know who to call, but you call Manny. Manny doesn't know who to call, but he calls me. I know who to call, and I put this person in touch with you. You don't know any of the people in the middle real well, but I will have a good sense of what it is you're looking for. The red flag would be you Google, you call. The guy's like, oh yeah, I'm an expert in this. Absolutely, come on in. All you've done is used his website and his SEO, his search engine optimization, and you basically confirmed what he was hoping for. He went fishing, you're on the line. Most of the time, I would say don't make the website and how it looks and how it's presented be the sales pitch. Do some more digging, find out what they do, find out if they have a good reputation.
Okay. I got no more questions.
Nice. I think that might be my last one. I think let me do this one real quick. So for contracts, where do you think is a good, like, should we always go to a lawyer for a contract no matter the degree of seriousness for it? Or like, is there a website that we can go to? I remember to rent out a space, like I had to get like a letter of intent and like I had to look over a contract from here, and we don't know who made it. And
the short answer is if it's a big contract in terms of volume, dollar or time, get help. If you're going to rent an apartment for a year, get help. If you're going to lease a car for 5 years, get help. If you're going to buy a house and make it into an Airbnb, which a lot of people try to do now, get help for that stuff. But you sign contracts every day of your life without actually reading it. When you buy a plane ticket, you're signing a contract. When you rent a car for a couple days on vacation, you're signing a contract. All of those engagements are contracts. You don't need to go get a lawyer to look over your rental car thing. But if you're going to buy something big, spend a lot of money, or do something for a long time commitment, call a lawyer.
Okay. Actually,
Now you get another one.
Would you recommend getting a lawyer to get the LLC, or would you say a lot of places say, yeah, you could do it online, but it's like, is it safer to just go to a lawyer?
If you're starting an LLC, it's good to talk to somebody who's a lawyer that can give you a little bit of free advice maybe, or can tell you where to start. You can set up an LLC all on your own. You don't need a lawyer.
Okay.
The complications come if you start having success. Did you choose a name that is unique and distinctive and isn't going to conflict with some other company's trademark? So it might be that your name is X, Y, and Z, and it sounds like, Joe Smith Enterprises, but you didn't realize that there's a Joe Smith Enterprises in 15 different states. So you need to tweak the name or change something. So starting the LLC, pretty basic. You can do it on your own. You pay your fee, you file the papers. But the more you start adding on to that tree, the website, search engine stuff, marketing, advertising materials. All that starts to expand the impact of it. Now you can start to have trickle-down consequences. Get a lawyer before you start to avoid those problems.
Okay. Thanks, Greg, for showing up again. Greg Henning Strategies. You go check them out. Where can they find you at, Ixchel?
Ixchel, you can find me on Instagram as Existential. That's existential, but with an I instead of an E. You can also check out this space on Instagram at Soulcialta. That's SOULCIALTA. And you can book the space through Instagram for now while I set up other modes to book it.
Greg, where can they find you at?
The website is Henning Strategies, HENNINGSTRATEGIES.com.
Anywhere else? Social media? Nothing?
No, the sort of things we deal with, you call us, we'll talk to you, but I just gave you the last
The whole
I
social
know,
speech
I'm
for the
just
last
saying,
hour.
a real
Stay off-
professional, all right?
Stay
A real
off socials.
professional.
Stay off
See,
socials.
look at that. Try to catch him slipping, couldn't do it. All right? That's somebody you guys need. Thank you for showing up, you guys.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Episode 12, Create and Execute podcast. Peace.